Good meowing, and welcome to Spoopy Stories with your host Skylore of Damage Received. In this episode, I'll be telling the story Don't Worry. It's a story that takes place in the American Midwest, but setting's not so important. Let's head on in, and let's get started. So, perhaps we should start first over by the fire. It's a nice little fire time story. So, let's get going. Don't Worry by Skylore of Damage Received. Janet just moved into the country. She is moving in with her estranged father. His name is Bob. There we go. She's moving in with him because she's been living on her own for a while. Her mother passed away a few years ago, and she's moving in with him so she can go to college in a small, rural town. So she arrives the first day, and she starts heading to the farm and whatnot. She gets to the property. She goes out to the house in the little rental car thing she's got to go meet up with her dad. So she knocks on the door to check it. It's locked, so she goes around the back. It feels a little weird. So then she walks into the back to go check on the farm part, He's got sheep and a few other things. They're all on the other side, the far end of the yard. She walks down across the fence next to it. She walks on down, decided to see what all the sheep are doing. She didn't walk over it, but rather next to it. She's not that tall, after all. They're all over there, just pawing away, doing their little sheep stuff. She walks up close. They're just fine, doing whatever. Bah! So she goes up back to the house again, staring at the sheep for a little bit, of course. For some reason, she's not feeling quite safe. So she's not asking, "Hey Dad, you over here? Where you at, Bob?" like normal. So she heads back to the house and opens up her luggage on the steps. As she's doing that, she's feeling a little weird again, She changes her shoes into, her boots on the porch, and she's smelling something a little off. Bad smell near the house. Well, whatever, she says, and she gets into her boots. She keeps the rest of her luggage there, and she walks around to go check, the back of the warehouse thing with all the farm equipment and see if maybe her dad's over there. Maybe he just didn't hear her arrive. Yeah, that's a good point. Let's move into the house now. I think it's starting to get the daytime, so let's keep up our spoopy atmosphere. Heading inside. So we'll head, here into this room. Turn down that and see the outside start to come in while we tell the next part of the story. Maybe he just didn't hear her arrive, Maybe he doesn't have good reception. It's the boonies as far as Janet's concerned. So she walks out over there. She sees that the barn is open. It's got the big doors open, so she walks inside. It feels a little weird here too, but nothing too weird. She flicks the light on. Yeah, there's power in there, and it's a bunch of tools and everything. It's a big old tractor in the middle, and looks like there's a little riding dolly out for working on engine stuff under there, and some tools spread out. So she says, okay. Her father, Bob, must have been working in here. So she looks under, doesn't see anything. Okay, that's a little weird, she says aloud. But she sees the keys to the house, so she grabs those. Maybe he went inside to go potty or something and just, walk on in and get that done. So she gets up to the house, which, we did. We got inside, so let's go ahead and close this up. Move on over to the center of the house. Why not? Take a nice look at the house. Skyline. So she gets up to the house, unlocks the door and everything, starts bringing her luggage in and starts closing it up. Before she closes it up all the way, she looks outside again and gets that weird feeling again. And there's that smell. She closes the door and locks it up. And then she takes her stuff upstairs. Now she's inside. So she says, "Hey, Dad, you in here? Bob?" Doesn't hear anything. Okay. So she takes her luggage upstairs and sees that each of the rooms has their own little locks in them. She goes, "Okay, that makes sense." And they all lock on the inside, like they should. So she gets up to one. She assumes it's the guest room. It's got a small little blue bed in there, and she starts bringing her stuff in. She heads over to the master bedroom upstairs and tries to open his door, but the door's locked. Okay. So she fiddles around with it a little bit, trying to unlock it, but it doesn't really seem to work, so she gives up on it. She goes back to her room and settles in for the day. It's kind of late anyway. She goes like, "Yeah, I'll see him in the morning anyway, whatever." So she sent him another text. She made it and locks the door and goes to bed. During the night, she hears something, like a bit of like a bird chipping at the wood of a house, like one of those foreign birds. What are they called? Well, not foreign for the region she's in, but, foreign to her. The little digging birds. You can never remember the name. In fact, she used to call them a finch, but it doesn't really matter. Maybe that's not even what she heard. Maybe she heard, like, someone scratching or something, Just a weird sound, like a raccoon rummaging through trash. Something just not right and kind of odd. At any rate, it messes with her sleep, but she gets through the night. She wakes up the next day and she notices that her window is now open. She doesn't remember opening it before. Must have just done it in the middle of the night, or maybe Dad didn't check on her, So she opens up the door and walks out. There's a bit of a strange smell in the house again. Bit of a feeling in there. It's just a little weird. So she heads back to her room, closes the door, and heads back to and looks out her window. On the window edge, she sees that there's some chipping to the outer wall and everything. So it's a little feeling. Listens out for the sheep. Doesn't sound like they're nearby. They could get right up close to the house if they wanted. So she closes the window, locks it this time, and makes her way back where she came from. She opens the door to her room, exits, and makes her way over to her dad's room. The smell is there again. The smell that was outside. She listens close and hears a quiet scraping sound from inside. So she decides to knock on the door. "Hey, Dad, you there? You in there?" And the sound stops. She hears a familiar voice. "Aw, just a little faint. I'll be right with you." It was her father's voice. Bob must be whittling or something. That might have been what she heard during the night. She responds quickly. "Okay." That really eased a lot of her tension, so she replied on top of that. "Hey, Dad, it's okay if I go walk around the yard, see the sheep and everything? What's going on?" She hears her dad respond. "It's all right. I'll be right out. Don't worry." So she decides, yeah, and heads on downstairs. Goes out the front door, and the smell's gone. No more bad smell outside. No more, and that feeling is gone, like a weight off her shoulders. She closes the door behind her, walks around the back of the place. She's still got the keys in hand, and she gets over where the sheep are and everything. And as she's there, they're all still on this far end of the yard, like they haven't moved since last night. And there might even be less of them. She thinks, okay, that's a little weird. Maybe they're sleeping somewhere else? So she decides that she's going to check the warehouse out. And before she does, she takes a look back at the house. She notices up the side of the house, leading up to the master bedroom, is that chipping. Going all the way from the window sill to the bottom of the house, across the yard. Janet gets a bit of a weird feeling from it. Looking at the house gives her an odd, not right feeling. So she takes a step back before deciding to go check out the warehouse. We're going to go ahead and move our character in the game again, just to get a better sense of the feeling and everything. In fact, yeah, we're going to go back outside. It's nice, it's pretty. We'll take a look at the crazy environment while we continue the story. I'm just gonna take a swig of this drink. Okay, and we are back. Janet goes over there, and looks the same as yesterday. Doors wide open, tools are on the floor, everything like that. She starts to hear a commotion from the sheep, so she walks on out the warehouse and sees that the sheep have moved. They're no longer near the warehouse. They're now in a corner to the left, far from the main house and the warehouse, right there in the middle of the left side of the property. So she starts to make her way towards them. As she does so, she notices that there's something in the woods on the right, something crawling or walking around out there. "Hey, Dad, is that you?" she says into the wilderness, and the sound stops. After a few seconds, she gets a reply. It's her father's voice. "Oh yeah, I'm just going to the warehouse, don't worry." For some reason, she could feel that weird feeling again, so she said, "I'm going to check on the sheep." No response. Janet gets over to the sheep and notices that they're walking further and further from the warehouse, towards the house. So she follows the sheep along and goes, "Ain't that a little odd? Dad always said you guys came to him whenever he came out." "Guess you guys had a falling out too, huh?" She sighs and goes, "Been fun, but I'm gonna go check in with Dad now. It's a little weird just talking to sheep." So she makes her way around the fencing, and as she's getting over towards the warehouse, that feeling she had on the first day just seems to intensify and just get worse as she gets closer to the warehouse. Shouldn't be weird. She was just there. It was really fine. Lights still on and everything. But it is getting worse. That feeling. And now she's starting to pick up on that smell. She can almost pinpoint it now. Kind of nasty, almost rotten smell. As Janet's approaching the warehouse, she starts to get a little cautious. She goes up to the little side door, peeks inside, and the lights are still on and everything. She has a kind of quiet, maybe metallic screeching. Maybe someone's working with a screwdriver along the floor or something. "Hey, Dad, what are you doing in there?" The sound stops. For a moment, it's just her and that gnawing feeling. Just her and that nasty smell. But then her dad's voice breaks the silence. "Oh, nothing. I'll be right out. Don't worry." She goes, "Well, there's a weird smell." To which her dad's voice, Bob's voice, responds, after taking a second of silence for themselves, first of course. Apparently that's how it was going to be. "Don't worry about the smell. Everything's fine. Head back inside and I'll be right with you." There's a weird, almost huff-like sound from down low after this. He must be on the floor for whatever he's working on. Janet replies, "Okay." Janet starts to make her way back. As she does so, she keeps an eye on the warehouse. Doesn't feel quite right. She sees movement. There's a figure. Seems kind of low to the ground. Her suspicions must be right. He must be on the little tool, the little dolly. He must be working on the tractor. She gets on back to the house, and the sheep are now right up against the house. Heh. She thought they must be afraid of Dad for some reason. Maybe he shot one of them in front of them or something. He's a farmer. It happens, right? Janet heads around to the front and notices something there. And in fact, I'm going to make our character go around to the front as well. Do. Yeah, let's get a nice look at the house. Well, we go over this part. Janet heads around to the front and notices something there. On the boards to the house, walking up to the main door, there's a bit of that chipping as well. She decides to check it out. After all, school didn't start for a few more days, so she had time up to the roof to check out the chipping. Maybe it's a mold or something that she's been smelling. Maybe her dad's been so busy trying to get rid of it that he's just been too exhausted to talk to her normally. So she gets up close and starts to check it out. she sees that it's not quite chipping. It's more like really deep scratch marks now as she got close to it. Just kind of dug in and twisted to the side. She laughs nervously. Okay, that's a little weird. Maybe her dad's been working with power tools on the house. But she notices also that the dirt there is really loose by the floorboards. She grew up a little wild and loose, so had no issue putting her hand there. Surely enough, the dirt just slides in. So she starts working a bit with her hands, get through and see what's under there. Because apparently there's some space. She gets about a head's worth of space real quickly. It's about a few movements of the hand. Wow, okay. I obviously need to take a sip of this drink again. It's starting to wear on me. Alright. Janet pulls out her cell phone, turns on the flashlight, and she hears the sheep starting to baa and baa around, so she checks that the flashlight is on. Turns to the hole and presses it to the hole. It's a pretty expansive hole underneath, actually. Maybe big enough for 2 or so people. Mostly dirt, some bumpy stuff, but the weird smell is back, though. Kind of grosser than before, too. Looking around, she sees that there's some shadowy little shapes on the side. Some fuzz. Must be a big mold over there. Gross. A big, fuzzy, lumpy set of molds. And to the right of it, there's some sort of dead animal. Maybe a raccoon or something. She looks a little closer. No, that's a little too big for a raccoon. Even for the fat ones. Even for the fat raccoons. She's not quite sure what it is. But she turns the flashlight off, and as she does so, she hears a little yip. She heard a little yipping sound from there, so she turns it back on. Maybe a dog under there. She looks. It's just the weird fuzzies. She notices they're starting to move. Maybe there were some weird-looking dogs. Were there puppies under the floorboards? One of the fuzzies rolls the other way, and it has legs. It's not... it's definitely a creature. Must be foxes or something. They're just living down here, and they ate something. Okay. They have foxes. And foxes up in here. They just don't feel right, though. I feel kind of like that feeling she had before. Maybe a little scarier than a puppy should. Scary foxes. Maybe they got rabies or something. Maybe she's picking up on that. Janet starts thinking aloud. Okay, I'll let Dad know. I'm going to head over to the warehouse, and I'm going to let him know there's foxes under the porch. So she turns the light off and stands up. Janet starts to make her way towards the warehouse. As she does so, she notices that the sheep are on the other side. They're on the farm's left-hand side, the right side from where she is. There's that feeling from the woods again. So her dad's gotta be in the woods, right? But she's not trusting it. Something's wrong. She saw something a little weird. Some scary foxes. Why would a whole bunch of foxes be together? Why not just 1 or 2? Maybe not a proper question. Okay. So she heads around the front and starts making her way to the sheep. She doesn't so much hear the movement in the woods across from her and the sheep, so much as she feels it. So she calls out to her dad. Hey Dad, there's some foxes under the porch. She feel the movement stop as well. That lingering feeling from before begin to swell. Then her dad's voice rang through the trees opposite her. Okay, I'll take care of it. Don't worry, just head inside. She feels a little weird. The whole thing feels a little weird. An idea comes to her mind. She's afraid to try it, but she says it anyway. What is Mom's name? There's a moment of silence before her father's voice, Bob's voice, rings out again. That doesn't matter, honey. Just get inside. Cold chill runs up Janet's spine. That's not the response someone who's been married to a woman for 36 years should ever say. That doesn't matter. Even if their last few years together had been the way they were. Something's wrong with her dad now. She knows it. She's certain of it. Her mind reels at what it could be. Maybe he's drunk and has been beating the animals or something. Something's wrong. So maybe she shouldn't even be here. She should go inside, get her stuff, and leave. As she starts to head inside, she thinks that's a little weird. By the sheep moving towards the warehouse, she can tell that Dad is heading closer to the house. She murmurs, "Guess I can just get upstairs, get back out. Guess I'll just go to an apartment or something. It's a little weird. I'll wait till he's no longer drunk, you know?" She starts to head over there. I don't want to go past the foxes again. Kind of scary, she thinks. But she walks over closer to where the foxes were sleeping. If she's gotta walk past them again anyway, might as well see what they were eating. What they managed to kill, was it a whole sheep? So she managed to take her cell phone, turn on the flashlight, and her Dad's getting closer. She can tell by the sheep moving further away. Their baas growing distant. Let's head on inside ourselves. Boop. Boop. Do. We'll head on upstairs and enjoy the view. Wow, what a beautiful night. Let's continue. Janet makes sure the light is on and checks inside. Between the floorboards. Not the foxes directly, no. Not the weird foxes that kind of weird her out. The really dark, almost fuzzy rot-looking foxes. She looks to the other side, closer to the body, trying to figure out what it is. Was it a bunch of raccoons, or heck, a small moose? Maybe it was a sheep. She's not sure. But she sees something that looks almost like a hand. Maybe it really was a raccoon. No, it still seemed too big. Maybe they'd got a hold of a bear carcass or something. It'd explain the smell, but she turns off the flashlight, stands up, and she has a little bit of a worried. She's getting a little more worried now as her Dad's getting closer to the house. He's almost where she parked the rent-a-car. She heads in, closes the door, tries to open it again, and takes a really good look at the door. Some of that scratched-in chipping by the handle, around the edges of the door and the floor. Chipping that she now knows to be scratches of a sort. "I'll be right with you," she hears her Dad's voice call out from the woods. So she closes the door. "Don't worry," his voice says, and she locks the door. She gets the key ring around her neck, and she heads upstairs, where she gets to her room. The window's open again. She looks around, doesn't seem to be anything there. She opens the closet, and there's a bit of a smell to it, like something had been sleeping there that was nasty, or something died. Not sure which. She closed it up. Raccoons must have got into it or something in the middle of the night. She goes over to the window, closes it, locks it this time. Takes a little stick that she sees by the window and lifts it up to hold the window locked in place. Janet walks over. Do. Let's head on over by ourselves. See the rising sun. Alright. Janet walks over, just outside her door, and looks down at the front door. She hears some rattling. Then after a moment, she hears her Dad's voice. Won't you let me in?" She hears from the voice outside. It's fine. Don't worry." "Oh, hell. It's fine. Don't worry," she says to the voice. She locks her own door, takes out her cell phone, and checks for a signal. There isn't any. She's a little worried. Okay. She decides to just sit there. Thinks aloud. Okay, I'll just get all my stuff packed up and I'll get ready to go. After a while, she hears some thudding around upstairs, and none too long, that feeling finds its way up her spine. Not a second after, a knock on her door. From the middle of the door, like if a small child were knocking. Oh, blah. There you go. I messed it up. After a while, she's been thudding around upstairs, and in none too long, that feeling finds its way up her spine. Not a second after, a knock on her door. From the middle of the door, like if a small child were knocking. Knock, knock, knock. Her dad's voice spoke to her, softer at first. Hey, we want to come downstairs for breakfast? Anything like that? Don't worry, I'm right here. She replies, No, Dad, that's okay. I'm just getting my stuff together. I'm just gonna go to an apartment or something. I don't think I can do the farm life, you know? It just smells too bad here and everything. After a moment, she hears a little knock, and her dad's voice responds as though nothing had happened. Well, why don't you come on downstairs? Nothing to worry about. Don't worry. There's a knock at the middle of the door again. That feeling still lingering. Just come on out and say hi to your dad. The feeling hasn't left Janet's spine. In fact, with every knock, it's gotten worse. So she paranoidly decides to look at the door. A little silhouette in the door. You know how there's always a little darkness when people are standing in the hallway and the light is on? Oh, the light was on, and now she thought about it. How did Dad get in? He never got through the front door, back door. She didn't even see one. What, did he climb in through a window downstairs? She hadn't heard him downstairs. Maybe he climbed through the window of his own room. Well, she didn't hear him downstairs. He had to get a big ladder to climb all the way up there. She looks at the little light under the door, and a chill runs up her spine as she realizes everything's not quite right. There's two, no? Sometimes there's three. Little leg prints in the way. Hey, Dad, are you holding like a hammer or something? She noticed as he began to shift around. Now there's four of them. 4 shadows in the light where 2 should be. No, honey, it's perfectly fine. Just come on downstairs, and there's nothing to worry about. A moment of silence echoed out as she stared in confused horror. 4 dark shadows where there should be 2. 1 for each leg. Don't worry. She goes, No, I think I'm just gonna call it early tonight and just go to bed. I'll see you tomorrow. A moment of silence. 3 shadows. Back to 4. Are you sure, honey? She responds. Yeah, I'm just gonna go to sleep. Another moment of silence. 4 to 2. Back to 3 shadows. Okay, I'll see you later. There's a knock from the middle of the door again, and the feet. The 4 shadows linger there for a while. Several minutes pass before they move on. She hears clacking footsteps down the stairs, enough for 2 men apiece. The unlocking of the front door, and whatever or whoever it was that had been talking to her leave the house. And the strange feeling subsided a bit. Rationale goes back into her head. I'm gonna take another sip. Now, Janet's dad doesn't have 4 legs or crawl around for fun. At least not last time she met him. So that's a little weird. Would he be carrying 2 big tools around just to willy-nilly them around? Didn't make much sense. And why did he knock so low on the door? So she decides to get all her stuff together. Get her backpack on. Get her essentials, you know? And just book it. She's still got the rental car out there. It'll be fine. So she waits. About a half hour. Till that feeling had completely gone away. She was going to get up, however. The feeling came back suddenly. She felt it up her spine as she began to hear something to her side. Sort of like scratching. And there's a quick knock and a thud from the window. She's sitting on the bed. Turns toward the window. She can't quite see. There we go. She's sitting on the bed, turns toward the window. She can't quite see it from where the bed's positioned, but there's a shadow there, beaming from the daylight to her room. Dread falls upon her. No longer is it an unknown feeling. The shadow is long and eerily unfamiliar. Is he crazy enough to climb up the window? Like the wall just to get there? And he put a ladder there? Just to come up there and try and say hi? There's no words this time. No voice of Bob ringing out. And after a little bit of smacking at the window, the scratching started again. Then it all went silent. He's fucking crazy. Something's wrong with him. If he's crawling around on all fours. Boop. Alright, mild adjustment. Let's go back out to here. Okay. He's fucking crazy. Something's wrong with him. If he's crawling around on all fours or carrying things around and pretending there's nothing going on, he's out of his mind. Absolutely flabbergasted, drunk, or something. So, Janet gets up, walks right to the window, and doesn't see anything new or different. Sheep are near the house, though, so he's probably back over by the warehouse. So Janet decides aloud, that's it, I'm bolting. I'm getting the hell out of here. I'm getting the rental car, and I'm bolting. She opens her door and sees that the master bedroom is ajar. It's wide open. Before heading downstairs, she notices a bad smell coming from there. So she decides to head over that way first. Janet did have a habit of getting distracted after all. Okay, well, he's a little crazy, but I should probably check on him or the smell. What is that smell anyway? She was thinking loudly, almost audibly, as she made her way over. She looks over into the bedroom. The windows to the side are wide open. There's wet stuff from the window, as though it was open during the rain. No one knew or cleaned it up. A little bit of mold growing on stuff, but the bed looked messed up. It was all thrown to the side, and there's stuffing and whatnot around. There's just a gun lying on the floor. Oh, he would never leave the gun lying on the floor. He always had it chained up, at least as far as she can remember. But at least he didn't have the gun on him now. She decides to walk a little bit closer and pick up the gun. She might need it after all. So she checks the chamber, and it's completely empty. The shells are used on the floor, she notices. She looks around, and there's a clear hole beside the window. Janet decides to look around some more. Notices that the bed itself has somewhat nasty, rusty-looking mold to it, and it's kind of cut up. She's not sure what the hell that can mean. It can't be anything good. So she leaves the gun behind. Like, okay, he's clearly off his rocker if he's cutting up the bed and shooting up the window. I'm out of here. She turns around, making her way downstairs. Opens the door. There's that smell again. Janet closes the door and hears the little foxes underneath start to yip and yipe. Yip, yip, yap, yip, 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 making weird noises. And then as she's starting to take a few steps down, she hears a word or two from under the porch. She hears the single utterance of a word, then again paired with another. The first word is don't. It's a familiar word at this point, mixed in with sounds, but it was in her dad's voice. Perfectly. The word combo is don't worry. She stops cold at this, turns there, and there's just yipping continuing. Yip, 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 yip. She's losing her mind. So she runs. She bolts to the car. Sheep are starting to make some noise. She gets to the car, unlocks it, opens the door, closes it behind her, turns the key in the ignition, and nothing happens. There's no sound. Janet tries the key again. Nothing. Not even the start or an inch. She opens the door, gets out, closes it, looks back at the porch worriedly, hears like the yipping and the yimpering, and there's some movement starting to happen there. And the sheep are starting to baa and scream and move further from the house. She knows her dad must be getting close. She looks into the car. She decides to do it. She lays down and looks, and the majority of the engine is just torn out, just ripped from its hinges and whatnot. He must be truly crazy. Is that what he was doing in there? Was he taking her car apart? So she gets up and she decides to run. She's not staying here a minute longer. She starts to run towards the nearest house, down towards the street. As she does so, at first there's nothing, just her running. A few minutes pass, She must be getting close to the next house over. Any minute now it'll come into view. Then she can feel the dread from before, smell something, hear something. So she starts to make her way down further, with the woods to either side. Can't be more than a few miles to the next house. However her breath gives, she is unable to run any further, and that's when it's no longer just random sounds from the woods. Instead, she hears her father's voice call out to her. Do-do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do-do. Oh, yeah. I need to take a sip. Do-do-do. Mountain Dew, zero sugar. Boop. Honey, why don't you come back? Come back to the house. Her breathing was deep, and her stare fixed on the part of the woods the voice was coming from. Just come back to the house. Join me in the woods. I'll show you a shortcut back home. She is nervously. No, I ain't doing that, she mutters between breaths. So she turns her body to face the same direction as her head. Stands up straight and takes a deep breath. How about you head on back first? I'll join you in a minute. There was a shuffle in the woods, kind of low to the ground. No, you should really come back now. I got breakfast ready. Silence. More shuffling from the tree line. You should come. Don't worry. She nervously laughs her little takes a few steps back towards the direction of the nearest neighbor's house. There had to only be a mile or two left, but could she make it? She takes a deep breath, remembering the sound the pup had made, and asks the question she should have from the very beginning. Hey, Dad. She holds her car key in her hand, brings her hand into her pocket, and makes him into a nice little punching knife. What's my name? There's a shuffle in the woods, closer this time, and the smell followed it. Her father's voice rings out. Doesn't matter. Just come back to the house. And that's when she knows, undoubtedly, whatever that is, isn't her dad. The shuffling got closer. Something else has his voice, and is standing in those very woods. Janet says, okay, walking further back, worried that if she stops the conversation, whatever it is will come after her. She goes, What's your name? A clack as the shuffling reached the wood's edge. Doesn't matter. You should come on back. Breakfast is ready. Janet gives a mild whimper, her nervous laugh devolving into that, and she starts to freak out, her voice cracking. That's okay. You head on back first. I'll be right with you. She's trying again, almost pleading with this voice to go away. You should really come back. You should come to the woods with me. I'll show you a shortcut. The voice refused to give up. Don't worry. She could hear the footprints walk closer, soft pads, an occasional clack on a branch. The voice took on a different tone now. It was still that of her father, but the intent was no longer feigning sincerity. Why don't you turn around and just keep going? I'll catch up with you. How's that sound? To which Janet replied, her breath almost caught up. No, that's okay. You head on back. A pair of eyes appear in the woods, gleaming red eyes about chest height, staring her down. The feeling of dread seizing through her spine as she clutched the key in her hidden fist. Don't worry. The voice changed as the eyes were followed by a paw, which made its way out of the woods, a black, rotten fuzz-covered paw with gnarly, hoof-like claws. This'll only take a moment. The next day, Farmer Rob, he's in his truck, heading down to check on his neighbor Bob, who he hasn't seen for nearly a week now. And about 2 miles down, he notices a backpack on the ground. He stops, gets out, and checks it out. It's a university backpack, full of all the little essentials you'd need for doing scholastic stuff. He loads it up in his truck for safekeeping. "Hey, anyone around?" At first, he doesn't hear anything. Then there's a sort of shuffle not far off in the woods, followed by a young woman's voice. "Hey, I'm stuck over here. Can you come help me?" Rob Rob makes his way over, being a good neighbor, asking, "Who are you? What's your name?" To which the young woman replies, after a moment, "Doesn't matter. Just come here." The end. Thank you for joining me for this story, which is called Don't Worry by me, Skylore of Damage Received. Now, if you're wondering what the creature in the woods was, I'll tell you straight up now, as the story's done. The creature in the woods is a varg, or warg, as they're known in other places. So, there's a lot of fun stories about them that have taken place, all the way from, like, Nordic times, and surprisingly into South America, and then up to, well, the southern part and even the Midwest of the United States. So, the stories of South America give them a different name. No, it's the same exact stories, same exact creature, only slightly differently described. And I mean very slightly differently. And then that carries on with more European-style description back into, well, America. So, I just took the standard story and plopped it on in. So, the standard story we get from farmers a lot, and they, here in the U.S., and they do have these stories, and there are those who, they lose livestock and animals and get terrified and just leave sometimes from these things happening, because stuff happens, and the stories come from that. So there's some dog things, like a warg is, basically a large black dog with more like, usually black dog, let's go, I mean large. It could be, size like up to your chest with where its head is at, or even higher. And they're big, they're bulky, and they're often described as having tusks instead of fangs. But the most notable feature is that their feet are different. They're not like proper claws. They're more like hooves. So I made sure to include that in the description. So very fun. One of the great things about warg stories is that a lot of them feature the wonderful trait of a warg stealing your voice. Like, not killing you and taking it, but just hearing it once and stealing the voice and using it exactly as you did, with all your little intricacies and whatnot. This is also something you see it happens with, what are they called? Just a few other creatures in mythology. And I figured that would make a good story. I think that was fun. So if you want to have a story about a warg in like an RPG or something like that, that's a really good way of going about it. So standard story goes with the farmer having their animals and whatnot, and then the main protective animal, like the llama or something, getting killed, kind of like if a puma or something like that were attacking. So that gets killed, and they don't find the body at first, it's just gone, and then it's up in a tree later, because wargs climb and jump. Wargs are known for their jumping capabilities, remember that. And all this other stuff, and then it goes down to, scratches at doors, at the handles to doors and stuff. Like, they're smart, they know what they're doing, but, they're not the smartest, they're just smart. So, there's all of that stuff going on, and I'm not sure if I'll keep this little what was the creature segment at the end, but I feel like for the first one, it's fun and it'll inspire you to tell more stories of your own. But the interesting part about these warg stories is where they nest. So rather than being in some magical distant place or up in a treetop or something like that, wargs in almost all of these stories that you hear, they nest at your house. Like the house of whoever place they're messing with, they'll nest at the house. Like they'll burrow right under the porch, or burrow a nest like right under the house, or get into the basement, or move into the warehouse or the attic, or anywhere they can really access, kind of like a raccoon but on a bigger scale, and that's where they live, and they set up their nests, and then they use that to go out. So you could literally be walking out your front door and there's a warg, or even a pair of them and their babies right under where you're walking as you're walking out. You know, you might lock that door behind you when you come in, but this big, huge wolf thing right there just waiting for the right time. The only thing that keeps you alive is that they're nocturnal and you didn't wake them up. So, interesting stuff. Very good for stories. You know, you should definitely utilize them if you haven't before, or if you haven't been inspired to write any stories, or have people in your games have experiences with creatures that are more intense or personal. Well, this is a good time. Do it. Well, again, that was my story. Don't worry, about a warg. And I just want you all to, you know, be happy with that. So thank you for listening. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope this format was fun. So I'll see you all in the next episode, or in the next story video. Toodaloo, have a good day. Bye bye.